Thank you for having me here today. I'm so excited to be here. You know that I have a lot of appreciation for what you guys do every day, putting your lives on the line to protect us. So thank you so much. And I don't think you know that when I was in college, I studied criminal justice, and I had high hopes of becoming a lawyer someday, but I wasn't smart enough or patient enough. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for what you guys do and the service that you provide for our community too. So thank you so much. We want to get to know you guys today. So we want to start. I want to introduce everybody, and then they're going to make an opening statement. Then we're going to go through a couple of questions. Each of them have a very limited time to answer each question. They're running a very strict ship here today, tight ship, so we can get you in and out. But we do want to provide you with this very important information so you can make an informed decision come election day. Our first candidate, Helen Morgan, and then Beth McCann, Kenneth Boyd, and Michael Kerrigan. And Helen, we can begin with you for your opening statement.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. I know many of you here, but for those who don't know me, my name is Helen Morgan, and I have proudly worked at the Denver District Attorney's Office with you and for you for the last 22 years. I am running for Denver District Attorney because Denver deserves a proven leader who has the experience and the integrity to continue doing what we are doing, which is bringing justice each and every day to those who demand it. And why does experience matter? Why does it matter? For the last 15 years, I spend 1 month of each year on call, because if I don't know what you do, I can't make decisions about how you do it and how we do it better together. And why does integrity matter? Because when you are the chief law enforcement officer in Denver, facts, not politics, need to play the first role and the only role when we make decisions. I embrace the opportunity to continue our phenomenal relationship and take us forward in these both challenging and exciting times in Denver. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Helen. Up next, we have Beth McCann. Beth?
Thank you. Well, thank you for inviting us here today. One of the proudest moments in my career was back when I was in the Denver DA's office, and I rose up in courtroom and said, "I'm Beth McCann, and I'm representing the people of the state of Colorado." As a deputy district attorney, I tried and won many cases, including horrific cases, horrific child abuse murder case, many murder cases, sexual assaults, aggravated robberies, and I was promoted to chief deputy and supervised other attorneys and ran a courtroom. I think many of you probably know that I was also privileged to serve as the manager of safety for Denver. In fact, I've probably hired some of you in this room. And in that position, I really experienced and learned more about what you do on a day-to-day basis on the street. And I actually was at the bedside of a Denver police officer who was shot in the line of duty, did survive. But I was also at the hospital with Broderick Bell's mother, the mother of a little 6-year-old boy who was shot in a random drive-by when we had the Summer of Violence. Any of you who were on the force then remember that summer. So I was with you in the community. When that happened, we went out to the neighborhoods and we talked about what can we do to keep our kids out of drugs, crimes, and violence. And we stood shoulder to shoulder in making efforts in our community to keep our community safe. We started the police impact teams. We started the Safe City program. And you know what? We reduced juvenile crime significantly the next year. Together, we can take on tough challenges. So I do want to have a little bit of a talk, though, about what I'm hearing out in the community when I'm walking and talking to folks in this campaign. There is a growing level of distrust between the law enforcement community and the community at large. And I hear it all over the city. And I think it's something that we as a community can work together on.
Okay, Beth.
Oh, am I done?
We're out of
Okay,
time.
well, sorry.
We'll hear from you a little bit more
I'll talk
in a
some
little
more
bit.
later. Thank
you
you.
so much. Up next, I have Kenneth Boyd. Kenneth?
Hi, welcome, and thank you all for being here. Many of you I've worked with. Many of you may not know me, but I'm Kenneth Boyd, and I also have been proud to serve in the Denver District Attorney's Office. I want to use a little bit of my opening to tell you a little bit about the dynamics of this race. So there are 3 Democrats who are running, myself, Beth, and Michael. We will run in June at the Democratic primary, and then the winner of that primary will go on to November to face Helen, who's running as an independent. I know a lot of you have been asking about how this election works, and it's somewhat confusing. I want to say one little thing. The same reason that brought you all to law enforcement is what brought me to being a prosecutor. It's about people. You care about people. You think about their lives. You're thrust into their lives at the worst moments of their life. And yet, you go to work every day, you laugh, you have some hard days, and together, you make sure that this city is safe. And that's what's important about this particular race. And it's why I'm running, because this is about the future of public safety in this city. And it's going to take dedication, it's going to take hard work, it's going to take somebody who has proven those qualities, someone who has been able to stand up and make tough decisions on a daily basis when it's the right call. And I've been proud to do that. I've been proud to do that on behalf of the people. I've been proud to do it on your behalf. When my job duties have asked me to do that, I've done it. And I would ask for your support in this particular race. I'm so happy that you're all here, and I'm excited to tell you a little bit more about our candidacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenneth. And now Michael Kerrigan. Michael?
Thank you. My name is Michael Kerrigan. I want to begin by thanking all of you. You weren't drafted into this job, you volunteered for it. And you're out there every day serving and protecting our community. And I know when other people are rushing out, you're rushing in. And I appreciate that. I'm currently on the CU Board of Regents, which is the elected board that runs the University of Colorado. $3.5 billion budget, 3rd largest employer in the state, and 3 police departments. And we interact a lot with those officers, and I'm proud, and they have done so much great for our campuses. But I want to tell you a little bit more about my background and what I bring to this race, because it is different than the other candidates. Because I have been a prosecutor. I was a prosecutor for 6 years, tried over 100 cases, handled thousands of cases. But I've done more than that. I've gone into private practice where I've run a business, and I've served on the Board of Regents, and I've even done criminal defense. So I know how criminal defense lawyers think, work, and plan. But I'm up here because I want to address what is something on your mind. Why can't we have a career DA? That's what we should have, a career DA. That's what we've had for the last 40 years. Well, we can do better. And if you don't believe it, just look a little bit north of here. Stan Garnett is the DA in Boulder. He came out of private practice after a stint shorter than mine in the Denver DA's office. And he has transformed that office. He has brought the Boulder DA's office from where it used to be not respected, where lawyers didn't really want to work, and now he has transformed that office and has an excellent relationship with all of the officers who work in all the jurisdictions that work in Boulder County. We can do the same in Denver. You know, a lot of people still talk about Dale Tooley. Dale Tooley, one of the most legendary DAs in Denver's history, had never been a prosecutor. Came in from the outside and brought that office to the next level. And I will do the same by bringing the best of all my experiences together so that we have the best possible DA's office and the best relationship with all of you. Again, thank you for your service. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Michael. Ran out of time, just in time. And now the questions for today. Each candidate will have 4 minutes to answer the question, and again, we're going to be very strict with that. And these were questions provided by you guys, the members of the PPA and the board of the PPA. And the first question, Helen Morgan, you're going to start us off. How would you handle the most recent police use of force cases that resulted in citizen fatalities? Would you have charged in those cases? Why or why not? We're talking about Paul Castaway, Jessica Hernandez, and Marvin Booker. If unfamiliar with these incidents, why have you not read the files? Helen?
Thank you. Good afternoon again. I'll start by saying the following. I would not have brought charges in any of the cases, and I have reviewed the letters and the files, because if you're going to say you would or would not do something, you need to do it, and I've done it. Let me talk about it, and you know this issue better than anybody because we've talked about it a lot. You know, in order to charge a police officer, you have to prove be able to believe beyond a reasonable doubt that a jury of 12 people or 6 people on a misdemeanor case is going to convict them. And in each and every one of these cases, there are clear issues of correct use of force because of imminent threat against you or somebody else in the first 2 cases. So let's talk about Paul Castaway. You saw the video. You've all seen the video. You've seen the actions. When somebody has a knife, and is approaching, we know because statistics show that can sometimes be more efficiently deadly than even a gun. I watched the statements. There were small children there. It was an escalating scenario. Let's not get it wrong. Is it awful that someone with mental health illnesses, disease, is not getting the treatment that they need? That their family is forced to call the cops? Yes, that's awful. But it doesn't make what happened there a fileable case because the officers acted in self-defense, and no jury is going to convict them. And the same in Jessica Hernandez. I was really impressed, I will tell you, by the Jessica Hernandez investigation. One of the things that I found particularly compelling is that the folks who did the investigation went out, and I've worked with the homicide unit for the last 15 years, went out and recreated the scene with the woman who was a lay witness who had no dog in this fight and said, tell me what you saw. They said, tell me what you saw. And does that match scientifically with what we know, where the bullets were in the car, and the other evidence, ballistic evidence that we had, and the crime scene reconstruction. Thank you to TIB for doing that. I now work with you on a daily basis. And again, no jury is going to convict. It was a legitimate use of deadly force. Because if you're threatened, and you're reasonably threatened, you get to use it. And I know, despite what some people say, nobody comes here in the morning wanting to shoot somebody and go home. That's not what you signed up to do, despite what some people may think. And finally, Marvin Booker. As a chief deputy district attorney, as I said, who's on call all the time, I spend a lot of my time reading autopsy reports. And this is what I know. If you don't know the cause of death, if you can't say this thing that was done, and there's lots to talk about with Marvin, but if you can't say this particular action caused the death of this person, folks, you're not going to make it to a jury of 12. You're not going to make it past halftime. You know that place where the judge says any motions for the defense and they get up and say, we're going to leave it on the record looking at the evidence in light most favorable to the people you probably have to go for? You're not. But you got to know that, and you got to be able to read an autopsy report. And you have to understand the realities of a trial courtroom. And after 22 years, I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. And Beth, do you need me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. So I am going to let you know that I have not reviewed all of the files of these cases. I have reviewed the district attorney's letters, and I plan to review them. But I'm currently in the legislature, so it's hard. We're meeting full time now. But I have reviewed the letters. And what I will say is that I cannot stand up here without having reviewed all of the files and possibly talking to the witnesses myself and tell you one way or the other, because I feel that it is really important in making that decision that the district attorney review every piece of evidence and speak to witnesses, and if necessary, ask for additional investigation. I think these cases, though, do bring up the issue that I was beginning to talk about, which is this atmosphere that I hear about throughout the city of some level of concern about the relationship with the police and the community. And that's a relationship that I pledge to you. I will work with you to rebuild that trust. We have the same goals. We want to make our city safe, our businesses, our homes, our schools, our kids. We want to continue to work on that. And there are ways to do it. We can be out in the community, both as members of the district attorney's staff, as officers. I go to a lot of neighborhood meetings, a lot of community meetings where the community resource officers are present. And I think understanding what each other does is really critical in rebuilding that trust. And believe me, that is something that we can do. It has been done before. I feel that right now it's an opportunity for us to really work together and stand together to show our community that we are all working to keep this community safe, and that we will continue to improve that dialogue and continue to talk. As the DA, I will make sure that we review every piece of evidence thoroughly anytime there is an officer-involved shooting, and there were some while I was manager of safety. That evidence is reviewed thoroughly and carefully before any decisions are made, and that when decisions are made, there is more transparency with the community about why a decision not to charge is made, why what the law says, and how that relates to the facts of that particular case. We can improve that transparency, so again, renewing the trust that we have between our community and our law enforcement officers. I think with respect to the Sheriff's Department, we have a new sheriff. He is pledging to review all the policies in the Sheriff's Department and work with the Sheriff's Department, and I'm encouraged by the kinds of steps that he's taking so far, and I think we all need to give him a chance to show the community as well, the relationship between the sheriffs and the community, how that will improve as we continue to work together. So, thank you.
Kenneth?
Thank you. So I think it should be clear who was the first person standing on this stage to come out in public and said, I've reviewed these files, this is what my answer was. You can watch it. It was a debate we had back in October with the Denver Justice Project, hosted one. It was on TV, and I stood up there. I was the only one who had reviewed the files and who had said, ask me a question about that case, and I'll tell you exactly why. I'm uniquely suited in the Booker case to tell you why I would not file that case, because I'm the only one who has done a positional asphyxiation case. It was a homicide case, and guess what? Not guilty verdict. Why? Causation. Just like I said back in October, when I asked my two Democratic opponents why they hadn't been down to read the file. You know, Michael wants to talk about Dale Tooley. Guess what? Let me quote Dale Tooley. Fish or cut bait is what he said when the Denver Post and other people were criticizing his decisions on officer-involved shootings. Come down to my office and find out the truth. Fish or cut bait. Because that's what we do. We get a file, we review it, we look at the facts, and we based on our experience, proving cases in front of a jury, make a decision whether or not to go forward in that case. Booker, you had problems with causation. Everyone talks about Marvin Booker got tased. Well, if you read the autopsy report, you would find out they found no markings on his body consistent with being tased. That's a problem, right? Everybody talks about the chokehold in Marvin Booker. Guess what? He didn't die of a chokehold. There was nothing in the autopsy that found that he died of something that was consistent with a chokehold. That's a problem when you take that case in front of a jury. Castaway, we saw the video. But again, you cannot just look at a video and make a decision on the video. You have to read the witness statements. You have to read what was going on, what was going through those officers' minds, what information did they have when they arrived at the scene of that shooting. You have to understand that, because we don't get to live in a 30-second soundbite when you're standing in front of a Denver jury. And your burden is beyond a reasonable doubt. We don't have that luxury. You better know the facts. And you better have the experience to understand how those facts play out. How do you get evidence in on a case like that? Because if you don't know it, you're not qualified to make that decision. Let's talk about Hernandez. Hernandez, another tragic case. Again, you have to know what was the information that the officers have. What was it that they were seeing at that time, right? I was asked a question on the radio about that after your chief changed the policy about shooting into cars. And they asked me, well, does that mean that'll be against the law and you'll charge those officers when they shoot into the cars? No, because that's policy. We deal in law. And nobody's changed the law to say that a car, when it's coming at you and you have no other resort, it is a deadly weapon. And that's exactly how it will be argued in court. And it doesn't matter the changes in policy. It matters what happens, what were the facts. That's what we're looking at. And if you're not going to come down and read the facts and tell us what it is you would do in that case, then you're either not qualified to do it or you're playing politics. And that's what we don't need. We don't need people playing politics with the decisions that affect lives in our community, be it whether an officer is going to get charged or someone else. Because it's not about holding the police accountable only. We have to hold everybody accountable, and we have to make the tough calls regardless of who that is.
And we have to move on. Thank you, Kenneth. Michael?
I know this is very important to you, and I'm going to answer your questions. You didn't get any answers from at least one of the other candidates didn't answer the questions. And I'm going to give you the same answer that I give no matter what the audience is. Because some of these cases, we've been in forums organized by the Ministerial Alliance and by Black Lives Matter and by the Urban League. And they've asked a lot of these same questions. And we got a lot of pressure to say, how can you not say you would charge in the Booker case? How can you not say that? And I said, I can't. I don't see that is a crime that based on what I know, that I would charge. And I'm giving you the same answer that they heard. And that's important in this race, because I've already heard today candidates giving different remarks and different answers. You will always get the same answer out of me, because I always give the same answer. Marvin Booker, horrible tragedy. Did I see a prosecutorial crime that I could bring based on what I know? No, I didn't. Jessica Hernandez, again, horrible tragedy. Tragedy doesn't make a crime. Was that the best approach, the best tactics? That I don't feel qualified to say. Was it a crime? Was there a legitimate claim to self-defense by those officers? Yes. And I don't believe it's a crime. Paul Castaway, similarly, same thing. Self-defense, they told him to drop the weapon. They told him to drop the weapon. I watched the video. I saw them backing off. At some point, those officers, and I've gone through your firearms training when I was a DA, so I understand the training that you've gone through. Again, a horrible tragedy, but not a crime, and I wouldn't charge it. So straight answers. That didn't take me 4 minutes. But there's a couple other points I want to make that are important to you when you're thinking about who's really going to have your back as DA. Because the public is not happy with those decisions, and you know it. You hear about it. Why not? Because of how our current system has this attitude. You don't understand our decision, you come down to our office. You have to come read the file before you will get the right to opine on it. I reject that. That doesn't serve you well. You need a DA who's going to go out in the public and actually explain it. And I have said that. And I know I'm going to get bloody hell from some community groups if they want me to charge a case, and I'm not going to charge it. But I have pledged over and over again, if there's a case I'm not charging that's a use of force, that's a public issue, I will go out in the community, I will explain my decisions, and no matter whether it's Occupy Denver or it's 9 News, I will answer their questions as how I reach that decision. They shouldn't have to come down to the office. They shouldn't have to make an appointment. Your DA should go to them, and that's what I will do. And that's the level of transparency. And I want to address something else here. The backhanded insult or insinuation that either Representative McCann or I have political motives or would charge a case for political reason is insulting and should not be tolerated. We are all lawyers. We are all bound by ethical duties to not bring a case we don't think we can win, to not bring a case that's not merited. And I know damn well how much that can set the system back. When we had the DA in Baltimore announce charges an hour after she got the case, going for a murder charge on that. And I don't think she's going to win a murder charge. And then what's going to be the public perception? When you have a DA overcharging something and then the public thinks the system is broken because she overcharged the case. That sort of perception absolutely has to change. And I'm one of these rare lawyers and candidates who doesn't use all my time, so I'm going to sit down. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And just since we're being fair here today, you brought up 9 News, but I think you should also do an interview with Fox 31.
Absolutely.
Just to make it clear. All right, also to be fair, we're going to start question number 2 with Beth McCann. And Beth, if you were elected district attorney, how do you propose to handle officer-involved critical incidents? Would you allow the involved officer or officers to view their body-worn video prior to making a statement?
So I believe that the Denver Police Homicide Unit is the best in the state. I've worked with several of those detectives and have brought several homicide cases, and I think they do an excellent job of investigating officer-involved shootings when it is a homicide. And I have a lot of faith and trust in the quality of the investigations that are done by that unit. And I would continue to have them do the investigations and take the statements that they're currently taking. I also would continue to have the Crimes Against Persons Bureau involved in investigating things that don't rise to the level of homicide. We have, there was a bill passed at the legislature that requires that departments begin to look at the option of bringing in an outside, some outside investigators or outside investigations. So that's something that I believe the department will be working on and that the DA's office would work on as well. I also plan to have more openness with the independent monitor office and work with them on some of the investigations that they're conducting. In terms of actually bringing the charges, I believe the district attorney is elected to make that decision. And only in a situation where I felt I had some kind of personal conflict, if I knew the officers involved, I would ask for a special prosecutor if the conditions were such that I did not feel I could make an objective decision. But I do believe that the district attorney is accountable to the people of this city and that as an elected official, it is my responsibility to make those tough calls. In terms of watching the video from the body camera, I've read your body camera policy, and the way I read it is that that is not something that would be allowed under the policy. And also, I think the integrity of an investigation would suggest that any witness wouldn't be allowed to review independent evidence before they make a statement. So I don't think I'm going to use all my time either, so thank you very much.
Thanks, Beth. Kenneth?
Thank you. So I had the opportunity to go out to Las Vegas, talk to their undersheriff out there about their critical incident team out there. And their critical incident team is charged solely with investigating the officer-involved assaults or uses of force or officer-involved fatalities. In my opinion, I agree that the system that the Denver Police Department has now is a good system. And I wouldn't be advocating to change that system unless the officer-involved shootings were dominating so much of the time of the homicide unit's other work that it became an issue that we weren't able to spread ourselves the way that we need to be serving the community. Because we want to make sure that the officer-involved shootings are absolutely thoroughly investigated. But we also want to make sure that homicide, who's been incredibly busy in the past year, also has the resources and the time to make sure that we're giving the citizens our time and attention on the cases that they deserve. So that would be an ongoing discussion that I would be having with the folks in homicide about whether or not there needs to be a new direction. In my opinion, I think that the homicide department does a great job. I don't see a need for it to change at this point. Same thing with officer-involved uses of force. I think the system that is in place now works in terms of the investigations that are being done, how they're being conducted, the thoroughness of them. What it takes is experience. The people who are going to be making decisions on that cases have to say, when they get the investigator's report and they read through it, is there something else that needs to be done? Is there a better way that we can do this? Do we need to re-interview this person or that person? That is what I view to be an extremely critical piece to make sure that this system continues in a way that functions the way it should be. And that's going to be on me. Myself, the administration that I have, are going to be charged with reviewing the files, making sure that those investigations are done completely, making sure that we can be proud to put those investigations out into the community and say, look at how thoroughly we do our jobs. We are proud of the work that we do because we do it so well, and we are the model. One of the things that I'm proposing to do on officer-involved fatalities is a public fact-finding review in cases where I don't file charges. We are living in an information age. People expect that information to be there. They want to know what's happening. They expect it to be on demand. Well, it doesn't work like that in our world. We have to do our jobs to make sure these investigations are done. If it takes 90 days, that's as long as it takes. If it takes 6 months, it takes 6 months. We have to do the investigation. And we have to make the decision. And when we make the decision, I want to make sure that the public understands it. Because Michael's right. Nobody comes out. Nobody comes over to our office to take a look at the files. Beth and Michael haven't been out to take a look at our files. How can we expect the public to come and live up to that type of a standard? The problem is, I'm willing to put it out there because I trust in the work that you all do, and I trust the work and the decisions that I'm going to do. And I will put it out there in a public fact-finding review so people will have the answers, because that's the problem. They don't understand the decisions that we have to make. And I want to make sure that that happens. Thank you.
Thanks, Kenneth. Michael?
So, Colorado has this terrific model with officer-involved shootings, where the officer cooperates and gives a statement right away. And I never want to endanger that. It has been so productive and has sped investigations to quicker and more accurate results. So I absolutely want to make sure we're continuing that model, and that you all know that you're going to be treated fairly in those investigations. And I've had arguments over the course of this campaign, and literally Occupy Denver has shown up at some of my events, and I've had arguments with them when they want to badmouth the police and say they're all bad, and when I've stood up to them and said, you really think police officers want to go to work in the morning and want to shoot somebody? It's ridiculous, it's outrageous, it's defamatory. So how do we build that confidence in that investigation? One, we continue the Colorado model where the officer cooperates, has representation. Sean Olson is a good friend of mine, and we've talked about this at length. Many of you know him, about how we get that information in early from the officers and from the witnesses, so we move that investigation forward promptly. But we also need to recognize, how do we build the public's trust in the objectivity of those investigations? And I think there's tools now we're not using, such as more use of outside experts, whether it be for use of training, use of force of medical experts, where it's not just the Denver coroner who's opining on a cause of death. We can build more confidence if we have somebody from the University of Nebraska come in and give, well, maybe not Nebraska, but different university, give an independent opinion on these facts so that the public knows. We're not just relying on this circular opinions. But again, what's really important is that we communicate that decision so much better. Because right now, the way it happens, again, is there's no decision on a use of force case if it doesn't involve a fatality, and does not involve a charge. The public just doesn't know. That has to change. And if there is a fatality, the whole thing the public gets is a press release and a written report, and no follow-up, no conversation. And that has to change as well, so the public understands what decisions we're making and why. Now, I haven't heard a direct answer on the body cam question, and I think you deserve it. And my view is those investigations should not be about tricks and gamesmanship, and maybe if you don't know all the facts, you might give a different answer. I'm a lawyer, and I represent clients now. I'm the only one who can say that. I represent clients now, and I know in the civil world, you would never have something where someone has to sit down and give a statement without them being able to review all the evidence. So I want to make sure we're following national standards. And so if national standards are consistent for the integrity and the national best practices that would allow viewing the videotape before giving a statement, then I think that's the way we ought to go. And once again, I'm done.
Thanks, Michael. Helen?
Thank you. Let me respond, first of all, to the last comment. Now let's talk about insults. When somebody says to you, the person who spent the phone this morning on the phone with a victim, you don't represent anybody. When somebody was called at 8 o'clock last night by a commander in the fugitive, or I'm sorry, a lieutenant, I just gave him a promotion, lieutenant in the fugitive unit saying, Helen, we need your help because it's vital in an investigation. You don't represent somebody. I have represented the people of the city and county of Denver proudly for 22 years, and I'll continue to do that. So let me talk about the second issue. There's a lot of talk about trust, and I am going to answer this question. But there's a lot of talk about trust, and there are vocal minorities of people who feel that they have not been treated correctly by the Denver Police Department, and that is a problem. It's a problem that we all share. But every weekend I walk neighborhoods, and every weekend I meet people who say, thank you for what you are doing at the DA's office, and thank you to the police officers who put their life on the line every day, despite the fact that people scream obscenities at them, deride them, and print false information. Thank you. So I don't think what we have is an overall bad police department. We have a phenomenal police department with some PR issues, and that doesn't mean there isn't room for improvement. I need it, you need it, we'll do it together. Okay, let me talk about the third thing. Nick Rogers, there is a typo in your question. For anyone who has ever written a search warrant, body worn is W-O, not A-R-N. All right? So I'm still reading the question. I also want to clarify, that would be red pen, and you know what that looks like. I also want to clarify, I wasn't there at that debate in October, so when Kenneth talks, and I'm sure he didn't mean to give a different impression, but I wasn't there to talk about what I would have done. What strikes me, let me now answer the question, what strikes me is that I'm the one person who actually knows what's happening right now on officer-involved incidents, because I've been there. Sometimes it's normally our top team, but sometimes I'm there because you know I'm in the homicide unit and something happens and I'm sitting there until somebody else, till Lamar gets there from Boulder or Doug comes from wherever he's coming from. So we have Aurora Police Department. They're now responding on all fatal, and we're going out to Aurora too, so just so you know, we're doing it. We should continue to do that. The way that we're going to continue to do the excellent work we do with the homicide unit is by having people as part of the response team on officer-involved fatalities, be the most experienced people in the DA's office. And so I will be one of those people. We'll have a team of people who come out, who work with you, and who also work with Aurora. What is going to change as it relates to critical incidents in my mind, and this goes a little bit to what we have been talking about. Mr. Kerrigan suggested that the Denver coroner was somehow in our pocket. Have you ever had conversations with people at the coroner's office when you just want to pull your hair out and say, you don't get it? This child, I can think of a particular case, this child was alive yesterday and today is dead. And I know you can't give me a cause of death, but good God, can you say there's no cause? Can you not look at what happened to that child and give me a cause of death that will allow me to hold someone accountable for that tiny beating heart? So to suggest somehow that the coroner is going to say what we want them to say is just something, it's a misrepresentation of factual reality as we know it. So no. Are we going to have the different coroner? We're not. Was that me? Okay.
Thank
I'm going
you,
to send
Ellen.
you an email about what I'm going to do. And I won't have any typos.
All right, we're moving on to question number 3 today. And we want to start this one with Kenneth. Describe the content and type of training you believe the Denver Police Department needs in light of your comments in this campaign about improved officer training and how you will partner with the Denver Police Department to improve that training.
Thank you. So, one of the biggest things about this, we get asked this question all the time, and Denver Police Department training is a Denver Police Department issue. That's the number one thing. Because when we as the DA start coming in and telling you what you need to do, that doesn't allow you to do what you need to do. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm not going to try to be your chief of police. Now, one of the things that we do now that I think is critical and I think is important is we teach at the police academy. I myself teach state and federal jurisdiction. Why they put that at 2 p.m. on Fridays in the afternoon when it's really hot, I don't know why, but I think that's important. I think it's important that the district attorneys come over for that piece of training, the legal piece of training. I know Lamar Sims does the use of force training. I think that's good because you should be taught by people who have the skill set and the understanding of how this stuff plays out in trial. Now, how is it that we're going to partner with you on these issues? Well, obviously, as we continue, or before I get to that, one thing I do think is important because I've heard this come up from some of the other officers in the ranks. We talk about the policy change when they changed it after Jessica Hernandez. I think it's important, and I would advocate very strongly that when they make those changes in policy, that you receive some training on it. Because just to issue a piece of paper at roll call that says, guess what, the policy that we used to have is no longer good, I don't think that works. You have to have some training on what is it that you want us to be doing. You said we shouldn't be doing this, so what is it that you want us to do? I think that's really important so you guys, when you're out in the field, know what it is, know what the expectations are. And that's something that I think is critically important for you all who are out on the streets. And it's important for us because it's important on those particular cases to understand what is the training because it's going to come up. What was the officer trained to do in that situation? You know, what were the other options? Were there other options? Those are the types of things that are really important. I want to use the remainder of my time. I'm sorry I didn't answer this question. I don't think that I would want the officers reviewing their body-worn cameras before they make a statement because of the problem it's going to put you in if you're ever on the stand to testify. Because you are going to get cross-examined up and down about conforming your statement with your body camera-worn video. It does too much damage to a case where we need to say, this person sits on the stand and they remember from being there first. And then if there's an issue and we have to go back and look at it so we can get clarification, I'm open to looking at that. But just from the start, I don't think that's a sound practice for the integrity of what we're trying to do in the courtroom. And I also want to say something else. It was brought up by the other candidates that we don't know how many, or the public doesn't know about these officer-involved assaults or incidents. That's not true. The Independent Monitor puts out a report every year. They just put out the 2015 report in the first week of March. It details all of those incidents out, and it tells you which ones were sustained, which ones weren't sustained. Those are the types of issues that we need to make sure the public sees that. Because by and large, guess what? You guys are out doing your jobs and not getting complaints. And it's a very small minority of people who get complaints and an even smaller minority that have sustained complaints.
Thank you, Kenneth. Michael?
Thank you. So a couple things. Let me, since I do have 4 minutes and I won't use it all, I want to address a couple things. When I talk about the coroner, it's not that I think the coroner's in the pocket, but if you all don't think that the public has a perception that you need some independent, objective, third-party reviews in on some of these decisions, then you're not paying attention. And that's all I'm saying. And that I know specifically, because I have done this as a lawyer, what it takes to make sure you have a convincing decision that people have faith in. And often getting an outside expert to come in and opine is the best way to do it. So that's one thing. And to what the independent monitor does, that's different. I'm talking about what about the DA's decisions on criminal charges on non-fatalities. The public needs to know that, needs to hear it, and deserves an explanation. And when they hear it from their elected DA, then hopefully they'll understand it better, even if they don't agree with it. And that will make your job easier. You know, I'm proud to have support of a couple of your former chiefs, Ari Zavaris and Dave Machad. And they both talked to me about, you know, the fact is, Mike, we are just like any other profession. We're just like lawyers. We don't want bad actors in our profession either. And the problem is when the public perceives that no one's ever charged, and I'm talking about nationally, then that becomes a real issue for all of you, the good officers who are there going to your job and trying to do the best job and only using force as a last resort. So let's talk about the training. I am a big supporter of trying to put more discretion in your hands. Big supporter of helping you recognize these societal issues that higher governmental officials have told you is supposed to be solved through an arrest, whether it be mental health, homelessness, substance abuse. And one of the specific programs I'd like to have us adopt is the LEAD program, Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion, where you're giving the training to recognize when you go out on a call that someone is clearly having a mental health episode, and that's what's driving the conduct and not some other criminal act. And that you've got the discretion to take that person to a facility that meets that crisis, whether it be a substance abuse detox facility that makes more sense, or whether it be a mental health facility. Because a lot of those people don't need to be in jail to begin with, and you know it. And then we start this cycle of where they're in there, they bond out, maybe they don't bond out, and it drives jail population doesn't need to. So that's a critical part, because the fact is, for far too long, our society has ignored issues like mental health and substance abuse, and it falls in your lap. And it's not fair to you, it's not fair to the city, so you need more tools on how to handle that. I know you get some training now, but you can use more so that you can recognize it and you can help get those individuals who are in crisis to the right place instead of to jail. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Helen?
Thank you. You know, the fascinating thing about this campaign has been people talking about what they're going to do. And so what I want to spend a few moments now talking about is what I've done. Because as you know, the best predictor of the person you're going to be is the person you have been for the last 22 years. So let's talk about training. A couple of years ago, I think it was now, those of you, by the way, in the last 15 years who have been through the academy know that I teach Miranda there, right? Fifth and Sixth Amendment. Hopefully you do. Hopefully you sort of remember a little bit. And hopefully you sort of remember that I like to keep the statements that you get. But that's another day. But I got a call from Robberies, and they said, you know, we are having an internal dispute about if someone is lawyered up on another case in another county to a different law enforcement officer, can we talk to them here? What if they say, well, I think I'd like to go home, but I'd like to go and talk to somebody else first. Can I go and talk to them again? And I said, it is clear to me, in speaking with both the robbery detectives and then with the homicide detectives, that there are nuances, or even nuances, that, I'd spell it right, that we don't talk about, right? For it's kind of advanced detective work. So guess what? Spent my own time when we spent an afternoon or a lunchtime at the crime lab with the homicide and all the crimes against persons detectives talking about the Edwards Bright Line rule, talking about if you've been out of custody for 14 days, what does that mean as it relates to Miranda? We will keep doing that kind of training. When I was chief of drug court, one of the really enjoyable times we had, and I don't know if anybody here remembers it, we went out on a Friday afternoon and we did role playing, right? And we stopped a bunch of cars that were inhabited by my deputies, and we went through a whole bunch of scenarios about how do you document something, because you know when there's a key in the trunk, but God damn it, you don't always articulate why you know there's a key in the trunk. And if I don't have that info, then I can't prosecute the case. So that's the training that we did. We did it together. Right now, what am I working on? If you are still a patrol officer, you're going to see me or my team out in the next few months because we're rolling out a new domestic violence partner case summary. Why are we doing that? Because we're not getting the information that we need to keep the most dangerous domestic violence offenders in custody, because we're not getting ODARA scores, and that's another day and another conversation. But that's the sort of training I'm doing. And the trainings that we do every day. When you call me, if you take a look at my phone right now, I will bet you that $1,000 that somebody's going to win, I've got a cop calling asking help. What should I do? You have to have a DA's office who you can call a group of people, not just one, but a group of professionals who will give you the right advice to keep you safe, to keep a case intact, and to keep going forward, fighting the fight that you're fighting. That's the ongoing training. You have 40 hours of critical incident training. You know when someone's out of control because they've got a mental health issue. Your options are limited, and I don't disagree that there should be more. But I'm going to keep doing, with a team of people, what I've been doing for the last 22 years in your training. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. And our fourth and final question, we're going to start. Oh, I'm sorry.
It is getting a little long, but well, first of all, one of the things that really struck me when I started in the DA's office was how much law officers are supposed to know and make split-second decisions based on that law. Because as a lawyer, I often had to look at the books or think about how to argue a particular motion to dismiss. And so I really admire you for taking on not just the work you have to do on the street, but to be able to understand and apply law in all the different categories, traffic, murders, and just the things that you do on the daily basis that the DA's office never has any contact with when you're solving problems on the street yourselves. But in terms of the training, so I absolutely agree that the DA's office needs to be involved in the training of officers. And when we pass a law down at the legislature, you need to be trained on what that law means and how that law will apply in your daily lives. And I have met with Chief White, and I do think the DA's office could have a larger role in training, both in the academy and in your on-the-job training, to make sure that you know what is expected of you legally as you confront these situations. So I would have the deputy DAs involved in that training extensively. And also, I would like to partner with the police department to work on this issue of de-escalation and training. And I know you have the critical incident training, which I think is very good, but I believe there's national work going on in PERF, the Police Executive Research Forum, and others to hone that training and to improve training for officers on how to deal with de-escalating situations, and particularly with situations where you're confronting someone with mental health issues. I worked down at the Capitol on the issue of the 72-hour mental health holds and trying to improve the language that is used in those statutes. And I learned a lot about, we had some officers come and talk about the frustration they feel when they take someone to an emergency room and they're released within 4 to 6 hours. They're right back on the street, and the officers get called again. So I think that's an area where we can continue to work. I worked with the Aurora chief, Chief Oates, who's not there anymore, but at that time, to work out a system where officers would actually be notified when someone was released from that emergency room or that mental health 4-hour hold or 5 hours, however long they hold them, so that the people that were being threatened or being impacted by that person's behavior could be warned. And so the officers know about the fact that the person is back on the street. I think there's room to work on this whole issue of mental health and substance abuse. And we are not doing a good job of providing adequate resources and treatment for people with mental health and substance abuse addictions. They should not be in jail. We need to be providing more resources for treatment for those folks so you're not seeing them on the street and we're not warehousing them in our jails. That's an area that we definitely could work together in solving as we move forward in this issue, as it gets more and more complicated what you're being asked to do on the street every day. So thank you.
Thank you, Beth. And now, moving right along to our next question, our final question today. Recent statistics show assaults to a police officer have risen approximately 100% in the past 3 years. Based on these statistics, do you support Congressman Ken Buck's proposed Blue Lives Matter Act of 2016? Michael, we'll start with you.
Thank you. I have not read the act. I'm aware of Ken Buck's bill generally, which would, for those of you who don't know, basically make an assault on a police officer a hate crime under federal law. Based on what I know, I don't support that bill. I do absolutely support the enhanced sentencing, the enhanced punishment for people that exist under Colorado law for assaulting police officers. And that's important because you are in situations that civilians aren't. And you're putting yourself and injecting yourself into those situations. So there should be enhanced punishments for those who then go on to assault you as you're trying to exercise your duty. So that's my straight answer, as I've tried to be on everything. We have 1 minute for that question, and I'm only going to use half of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Helen?
Thank you. I haven't read the details of the bill. Those who know me will know that if I have to choose a local or a Fed, you know what I'm going to choose each and every time. And so I don't know that that the federal law itself is going to impact any work that we do. But I haven't read the bill. I will read the bill. It's a great thing to point out. I will read the bill, and I'll let you know. I will tell you, too, that I believe I'm the only person here on this podium who has prosecuted a felony assault against a police officer who was sitting, literally eating his lunch during a break. And a crazy guy came up and started wielding what turned out to be a hammer at his police car. We did a lot of work on that case. He's also, that particular police officer, what I like to call him, please let him know, a shit magnet. But I was proud to do that. It was a hard case, but we did it, and I'm proud to do it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen.
So the way I understand that bill, it is a federal bill, and it would be a federal offense. I, as well as the others, have not actually read the bill, and I feel that I would need to do that before I take an absolute position one way or the other. I do support the enhanced penalties that we already have in state law for assaults against police officers, and I am really distressed by what's going on in our communities with respect to officers. I think this morning, I heard there was an officer shot, not in Denver, but certainly recently there have been a number of these kinds of incidents, and we have to take a strong stand against that kind of behavior. Cannot be tolerated, and we will, as your DA, I will take a strong stand against any crimes against officers. And I will take a look at that act. I know Ken Buck. His wife actually serves with me in the legislature, so I will speak with her about it as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Beth. Kenneth?
Thank you. So one of the biggest tragedies of what's going on right now is Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter. It's us against them. That can't happen in a community. If we want to keep Denver a thriving community where people want to come and live and start a business, raise a family like my wife and I are doing in Northwest Denver, we have to make sure that that does not continue. It's going to be the biggest challenge, one of the single biggest challenges to the next DA, is somebody who can deal with bridging that gap so that it's everybody, not Black Lives Matter, not Blue Lives Matter. The perception that it's us against them is a real problem. As I understand the Blue Lives Matter bill, it is a federal bill that deals with states who don't have enhanced penalties against in their state law for assaults on officers. If the bill, I haven't read it in its entirety, if the bill is confined to just that it deals with states that don't have enhanced penalties. We do in Denver or in Colorado. I support those. I do support that. It should
Thank
be
you,
across
Kenneth.
the board.
Thank you, Kenneth. And now we have closing statements from each of the candidates. And should we mix things up? Should we go? I have a minute? Oh, I have to do the closing arguments? Let's start with Michael on that end since we started with
Okay.
Helen on this end.
Thank you, Deborah. I want to thank Nick and the rest of the board, and thank you, Deborah, for making time today. I know you all have busy and you have other things to do after this. So, listen, what I want to leave you with is don't be afraid of change. And don't be afraid, and don't settle for the status quo. The fact is, we do have a great DA's office, and I say it all the time. But it's also been led by insiders for the last 40 years. And someone with a diverse experience, someone who has worked in the private sector in the 21st century, someone who has done some defense work, and someone who's been a DA can bring that office to the next level, which is exactly what I want to do, because we can do better. The fact is, we're all out in the community, and the community is not happy. There are many people in the community who are itching for change, who want a new direction, and I want to do that, because I know for a fact that will make your job better. When people understand, when the DA is out in the community, when the DA is meeting with people from across the city, when the DA gets applause lines when they walk into a room, that's going to make your job better. And you know what's more important also is when the public has full confidence in all of you, as they should, that's when DAs win trials. And that's why our future is tied to yours. And together we can make Denver safer, we can make it better, and we can make sure that we have a criminal justice system that we're all proud to be a part of. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your time. Go to my website, come see me at other events, and you'll hear me giving the same answers no matter the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Kenneth?
Thank you. Thank you to the PPA board for having us all. Deborah, thank you for being nice enough to host today. You know, nobody's up here advocating for the status quo because we can always do better. When I was growing up and my dad owned a roofing company and he built that company on his own, he used to tell me when I was a kid, you should constantly be looking for how you can do better, always challenging yourself to do better, to see what you can do to find improvement. I'm the candidate who stood up in October in front of a very hostile crowd to the police and said there are so many great things that we do in Denver with our partners in law enforcement. And it's one thing to call it the status quo, and it's another thing to say what it is. Denver is a national model in so many different ways. When I've gone out and I've talked to other prosecutors in Milwaukee, when I talk to the prosecutor's office in Las Vegas, when Boston is adopting what the Denver DA does in terms of its transparency, that matters. And it's one thing to say we're going to make change, and it's another thing to know what we do well and know where we can make improvements. And that's what I've been out saying. Don't forget that everybody in this room, when they put on a badge or when we put on our suits, care about the people in this community. It's why I talked about it the first thing when we talked about this opening, because it's the bond that we truly share in law enforcement, is that we care about the community, we care about getting it right, and we care about this elusive concept called justice. And we pursue it every day. It matters. I don't mind being called an insider. I've dedicated my career to being in law enforcement, to trying to get it right, and I'm committed to keeping doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenneth. Beth?
So I join in thanking everyone here for taking the time from your busy lives to come and listen to this talk. It is a critically important position, elected citywide, representing the people of the city and representing you as members of that community. So what you get with me is, in my opinion, the best of both worlds. I was a prosecutor for many years, and I rose to the level of chief deputy and supervised other lawyers. But I've been out of the office for a while, and I've been in the community, and I've done other things, and I've learned a lot. I am the only candidate in this race who has prosecuted, supervised lawyers, and managed a large office and made the law. All of those experiences I will bring to serve you and to serve the people of this city. We all have the same interest, and that is to keep our city safe. I raised a family here. My 2 kids went to East High School, and I know the struggles that we all face when we live in such a vibrant and growing community. Now we have legalized marijuana even, so I know we're facing new challenges all the time. But I bring that experience to you to serve as your DA, because what I can promise you is that I will prosecute cases fairly and equally. I will treat everyone in the system with respect, and I will prioritize rebuilding the relationship, the trust between our community and the law enforcement community. We have got to work on this together, and I will do that as your next DA. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Beth. And Helen?
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming. You know, defense lawyers in trial, and many of you have sat with me during trials, will often say the following to a potential juror. If you were innocent, potential juror, would you want yourself on the jury panel? I've never really quite understood that question, but I'm going to put it a little differently. God forbid something awful happens to you or someone you love the first day there is a new DA in 2017. Who do you want in that office? The office of Denver District Attorney, the chief law enforcement office in Denver. Do you want people who are not called now to the second floor of the Denver Police Department and may not even know where it is that they need to go? Do you want people who haven't tried 20 homicide cases, who haven't been to grand jury, who haven't made on-the-spot decisions that are not popular with people with silver and gold badges? Do you want somebody who will stand up for the right thing and you trust them to do that because that's what you've expected that person to do and that's what she has done? And if you want that person, if you want me to be your next DA, I need your help. I'm going to cut to the chase. These people are raising a lot of money from politicians and people who don't know what we do. I have a table out there. I am proud to have your support. Not the support of ex-mayors, not the support of ex-police chiefs, your support. And I need it now more than ever. Thank you.
Helen. And we just want to conclude by saying thank you so much for having us here today. We hope it was informative to you. We hope you've learned some stuff. It was insightful to me, so it was nice to meet all of you. Once again, let's have a round of applause for Michael Kerrigan, Helen Morgan, Kenneth Boyd, and Beth McCann. And they're going to kick us out so you can have your meeting and have all the fun that you have without us. So thanks again.